unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome in. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a nice start to the weekend. Let me tell you about tonight's program. We'll cover new research that looks at cities with highways carving them up. Now, they get cars places fast, but it turns out using computer modeling, highways in cities block social ties. That's right, those giant concrete paved thingies quietly break up entire communities. What can we do about it? Cars aren't going away anytime soon. This is a question we'll explore in about 10 minutes' time. Then, I brush my teeth and floss every night. I floss for 500 some odd days. How do I do it? A streak. I got a running tally. I don't want to miss a day. And streaks are a powerful tool. According to new research, when people do their work, they would rather keep a streak going than make more money. That's right, you'd rather not bust up your streak than make more money. So how can we use this powerful psychological tool to help us? And why does this go against everything we think? Like, you'd think someone would just want more money. The answers lie in a new scientific study, and we'll cover that in about 20 minutes. All right, I got something extra special planned right now. I'm really excited about it, so let's jump right in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday, or maybe from today for tomorrow. If you're confused, you're not alone. This is what happens on The Last Show with David Cooper.
It's advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday, today. I'm sure that extremely confusing title is self-explanatory, but in case you're not following, here's what we're about to do. Yesterday, I headed out to a busy park, and I interviewed people. I asked them what their advice would be for their tomorrow self. So, like, from the perspective of yesterday, which was today in this example, what's your advice for your tomorrow self? And now we're going to have one of those people on the show. So it's advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday, today, because we're doing that today, and yesterday we gave the advice, but on yesterday, we wanted to play the advice for their tomorrow selves. Is this clear? Advice from your past self played today with a follow-up. So here's my recording with one Maya in the park yesterday. And then after, we'll bring her on and see if she followed her yesterday's advice for tomorrow today. All right, I'll play the clip. I'm here with Maya, and we're looking for her advice for her tomorrow self from yesterday today, which will be tomorrow when this airs.
Tomorrow?
Just tomorrow. Maya, what's your advice?
My advice for myself tomorrow is to only eat good food and don't skimp on dessert. Yeah. Get to drink if you want it. You know what I'm saying?
What is your favorite dessert? Answer in the form of a haiku.
Wow.
We're waiting.
I have to count the syllables.
You can do 757 and go buck wild.
Okay. My favorite dessert is made up of only chocolate and sea salt and caramel. I don't know how many syllables.
Close enough. Thanks, Maya.
Thanks, y'all.
Okay, that brings us to today now. That was yesterday. That was then. Now is today. Currently, we're in today. That was yesterday. So from yesterday, we are now in tomorrow, which is today. First of all, Maya, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Okay, I like it. Well, welcome to the show, Maya. You really up that haiku, I gotta say.
Totally. I was caught off guard, you know.
So you're speaking to yourself in the past. We're trying to get the show going where you can speak to yourself from the future, but we don't have the technology quite there. Your advice was eat good food. Have you been doing it?
Hell yeah, I've been doing it. Literally later that day, I went to a place called Veselka.
Ooh, they got those pierogies, I think?
I ate a giant plate of pierogies.
Oh my God.
I had borscht, which was honestly remarkable.
What are you, 100 years old? You're like a granny already.
Yeah. I am a Jewish grandma at heart. That's my truest form. So
I am a 90-year-old Jewish man trapped in a 38-year-old boy's body. Soup is my love language. Literally, when I'm sick or it's my birthday, my friends will order me soup. My girlfriend makes me soup. Soup is my favorite activity. So I love this. What about the dessert stuff?
Yo, dessert. Well, I have to say, I could have been eating better dessert over the past few weeks, but I am actually in the process of planning a dessert potluck.
Wow.
Where I am inviting all of my friends to my house and they each have to bring dessert.
Just send me the address. I'll be there. What desserts do you expect to have, and what dessert are you going to make yourself?
Oh, I'm in charge of the drinks.
Oh.
So we got hot chocolate with optional peppermint schnapps. We got hot toddies. We got wine. I'm bringing drinks. Seltzer is a constant in my house again, Jewish grandma life.
Question for you. You mentioned loving chocolate. You tried to write a haiku on the spot about chocolate. Should we do that again?
Oh, gosh. I can try, but I can't promise that it'll be any better than the last one.
575. 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables.
Okay. Chocolate is always there for...
That's already 5. Are we going to the next line? Are we doing like a fancy poetry?
Yeah, next line.
Chocolate is always there for... That's 5 syllables and then 2 syllables. We're not doing really well here.
Me.
3.
In all of...
4, 5, 1.
Its shapes.
Glory, I think. Glory would be...
Glory.
I've lost count.
I love chocolate.
All right, whatever. That's a haiku. Love it. My favorite dessert is cake. And I know that sounds silly, but cake is great. And I wrote a haiku for cake.
Let's hear it.
Let's hear it. My beloved cake, it calls my name at all times. Cake is true delight. How do you like that? I did some work for this.
Cake is true delight. That truer words have never been spoken.
Do you have any advice for your past self from the future? When we get the technology worked out, we'll get this advice to your past self.
Okay, great. Past self advice. Don't worry so much about what other people are feeling.
Yeah, screw other people and their feelings.
Do what you want.
Just do what you want. Buy a Hummer. Throw your trash on the street.
Don't live in the guilt of whatever, don't live in the Jewish guilt. That's what I got.
But what about remorse? What about, I've made a lot of mistakes and I still feel bad about them, but they've shaped me. Don't you want to feel bad for some of the things you've done in your life?
I don't feel like I've done so many things. Maybe because I was so worried about what other people were feeling that I didn't really do that much. But then I was still racked with guilt and didn't get the things that I wanted. So now I'm just you got to do the things you want.
Well, I dedicate this bit we've done on advice for your yesterday self tomorrow. Wait, advice for your tomorrow self yesterday. I dedicate it to my ex-wife because I got some remorse there. Maya, Thank you for following up and thanks for doing the interview in Washington Square Park.
Thank you. Go Birds.
Go Birds. I don't know what that means.
Philly.
Oh.
I'm in Philly.
I mean, there's a lot of pigeons. I thought maybe it was that.
No. It means the Eagles.
If you want to participate in advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday, give the show a call. The number is 1-888-505-6644 and leave a voicemail with your callback number and your advice for your tomorrow self. We'll call you back live on the show. And you can see if you followed your yesterday's advice today. 1-888-505-6644. Just prepare some advice for your tomorrow self. And if you do that now, that'll be today. But when we follow up with you, it'll be yesterday, and that'll be advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday, today, which will be the day we do the show. 1-888-505-6644. Leave a voicemail. It's not confusing at all. Coming up, new research plotting out cities and social relationships in them shows that highways carving up urban landscapes slow down friendships. So what should we do about it? Cars aren't going away. We'll take a look with one of the number nerds behind this study after the break and answer that question.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. This is your nightly dose of chaos, confession, and questionable life choices. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Highways get us to places in our cars pretty quick, but they slow down our friendships. They block social ties. Could giant concrete walls be breaking up entire communities? And if so, what should we do about it? How should we design urban landscapes? I'm here with a data science professor at IT University of Copenhagen, Luca Aiello. Luca, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So what made you want to study highways as a kind of social force?
Yeah, so we are a team of data scientists, especially focusing on urban data science. So we gather geo-referenced data from the web and many sources to understand what are the patterns that make the life of a city a good life, right? And for a very long time, urban designers have investigated the role of highways on life and social life in cities. There is a lot of evidence, especially qualitative evidence, about highways disrupting our mobility patterns, but also our social patterns. But the problem here is that nobody really could put a real quantitative number on this disruption. And so what we thought is, can we actually leverage big data to measure how much these highways disrupt our possibility to form new social connections?
American cities, Canadian cities, some more than others, but are often designed kind of car first. Even historic cities, car infrastructure has been jammed into them. They feel somehow different than European cities that are more focused on transit, on streets that are more oriented towards pedestrians. Is this what feels like predominantly American car first city design? Does it make us have less of a sense of community?
Absolutely. So the problem of very large highways being built in the middle of city centers is a peculiarly American problem in a way. And this is why a lot of historians and urban planners have studied this problem specifically for US cities. But again, so the thing that we probably haven't realized and the public hasn't realized is that usually the dream around this very, very complex transport infrastructure has been solved as the opportunity for us to move around freely and experience more things in the city, to be more connected. So highways and personal car-based transportation equals freedom. We show there is actually the complete opposite. And highways disrupt our opportunities to move around, opportunities to create social ties, which ultimately means also disrupt our economic opportunities to create new things for us.
How do you quantify the community in numbers? How do you quantify the disruption to a community in numbers without getting too technical?
Of course. So imagine that you can have a map of the city, right? With all the highways, the rivers, the houses, everything mapped, right? And now you can overlay onto this map a social network where nodes are home locations of people and links between these home locations represent friendship links. And we estimate this through social media. So we have a large data set from Twitter, in which we could estimate these fine-grained locations for home locations and also the connections, right? So now what you would expect there is that if you have two areas that are separated by a highway, the connectivity in between these two areas would be thinner than what you would expect, right? So what we came up with is a statistical model that simulates a social network that connects people in a counterfactual scenario that disregards highways. And then we compare this counterfactual simulated scenario with the real data. And we see that in the real data, there is indeed a very, very noticeable drop in the connections across the highways. And that's how we measure it.
Well, I live in New York City, in Manhattan, and despite New York's subway system being shared with our friends the rats, like it is not a clean system, it's one of the outliers of American cities with decent public transit when the trains run on time. And it's a city that really feels alive. Like you really feel like you're in the street with people, you're a part of something. I don't know. I can't think of another American city that feels quite that way. What can places that have these car-dominated downtowns, highway-dominated downtowns, and urban landscapes, what can they do to try to build community or maybe try to reverse this if they wanted to?
Well, absolutely. So, in fact, so your intuition is indeed correct. In fact, if we look at our score of disruption, which we call a barrier score, New York City is towards the bottom of this rank. So meaning that there are not a lot of barriers created by highways in New York. And the only city that it's better than that is Portland, apparently, given our study. Whereas cities like Cleveland, Orlando, Oklahoma City are very much impacted by highways. So the solution is, in principle, not to build such large transport infrastructure in the middle of cities. Obviously, this is a little bit too late for many cities in the US, but the political system actually acknowledged in the past this problem, and some money has been allocated in the past years by the Department of Transport to actually undo some of this damage. And these programs have been running for a couple of years during the prior administration, and then now have been discontinued by the current government. But you can invest some money to actually build bridges, to cover up parts of the highway, to actually reconnect these communities. Is of course a very costly endeavor, but probably worth exploring.
We're on talk radio. People are probably in their cars right now listening. They're not going to change their lifestyles dramatically. They don't want to get rid of their cars, or they feel they need their cars to do things in life like, I don't know, go to work. What small things can the average person advocate for or change in their lives to get a better sense of community without completely reconstructing their cities and their daily lives?
No, absolutely, and I don't think it's appropriate to blame people who actually live in cities, right? Because in a way they're the victims of these historical decisions. And again, so this is about trying to live your local neighborhoods maybe differently. So it might be hard depending on the distribution of amenities that you have around you. So the main point is to realize that using the car reinforces these barriers, and the more people actually jam highways with cars, the more highways will be built, and so decreasing demand in that respect might give a bit of a signal that building local infrastructure rather than connecting places far apart in the city might be a good way to go. Ultimately, these small forms of activism, if adopted widely, can go a long way.
What would your findings, if you could use them to design the ideal city, let's say in North America or Europe, what would that city look like?
Well, clearly, we know that we need a lot of public transportation and infrastructure for active mobility, meaning, for example, cycle lanes. So this is something that several cities in Europe are investing on. So I am now talking to you from Copenhagen, which is a very famous city for bike infrastructure. So these things ultimately improve the life of people immensely without hurting their freedom to move around also on long distances. This is clearly something that should be tackled at the design level, at the political level, and I think that Europe offers several examples of such a successful type of design.
Well, Luca Aiello is a data science professor at IT University of Copenhagen. Luca, thanks for talking to me today. Thanks for sharing your research.
Thank you, David.
I floss every night, without fail. Now you might think, David, you've got great oral hygiene. How do you do it? What's your secret? Well, I'll tell you what my secret is. It's streaks. Streaks are a powerful tool to stay on top of things. They're so motivating that in one experiment involving people's day-to-day work, they would rather keep a streak going than receive more money. That's right. People prefer streaks to cash. Don't believe me? We'll dig into the details of how it works and how you can use streaks to improve your life next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Prepare to have your mind blown as we delve into the complexities of relationships, explore the cutting edge of science, and celebrate the bizarre and beautiful absurdity of the world around us. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Streaks are a powerful tool. You know, doing things several times in a row without skipping. Some people work harder for less money if you incorporate a streak into their work. That's right, you're more likely to accept less pay if somehow a streak is worked into what you do in your career. If you don't believe me, I'm here with somebody who showed this in a study. Her name is Dr. Katie Mehr. She's an assistant professor in marketing at the University of Alberta. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's define what a streak incentive is before we talk about your study.
Yeah, so a streak incentive is this idea of taking a streak, which is 3 or more consecutive tasks, and incorporating it into an incentive scheme. And so the way that this worked is people would be paid an increasing amount for consecutively completing work tasks. So maybe like 1 cent for the first, 2 cents for the next one, 3 cents for the next one. And then if they continued consecutively, they would continue to earn 3 cents. But if they took a break and chose a fun activity in our studies, then they would return down to this 1 cent amount. So the idea of a streak incentive is trying to get people to do things consecutively because that's how they earn more money.
But people would prefer to participate in streaks than they would earn more money? Is that what you found?
So in our studies, participants were randomly assigned to one of 2 different incentive schemes. So they didn't know that we had these different incentive schemes. They just saw the one that was in front of them. And one of them was the streak incentive. And the other was what we call a stable incentive. And it's pretty simple. It's just we paid people the same amount for each work task that they completed. So maybe they got like 3 cents each time they completed a work task. And so the idea here is that in the streak incentive condition, participants are paid a little bit less on average because of that first work task being paid 1 cent, second being paid 2 cents, while in the other condition, they're getting paid 3 cents for all of these. But we find that people who are randomly assigned to this streak incentive condition actually complete more work tasks, which kind of goes against a lot of standard economic theory, which would suggest you pay people more, they're going to do more work, that is.
I want to stretch this out to New Year's resolutions, because I read a paper, I don't know, a few years ago, and I talked about it on my show about the best way to stay on track with your New Year's resolutions is to incorporate streaks. And I've had incredible luck with this. I floss every single night, and I have done so since December 31st, 2023. I wanted to start a day early because I'm like, okay, can't start on the 1st. I wanted to ramp up. It has been shown that streaks really help people stay on track with goals. Does this surprise you that people would rather stay on track with a goal than they would just earn money?
Yeah, so I agree with you. There's a lot of research that suggests that streaks are really powerful and that people have this goal of maintaining a streak. In this case, the way that we set up these studies, we kind of stacked the deck of cards against ourselves in the sense that we made it so that the streak condition earns less on average. And so because of that feature, we really weren't sure what was going to happen. But then we did find that people who saw this streak incentive completed more of these work tasks. And so that surprised us just because, again, standard economic theory would suggest the opposite. But we're finding that these streaks are actually pretty motivating. And it seems to be something about wanting to stick to this goal of earning as much as possible, basically maximizing your bonus out of the studies. People seem more committed to that when they're facing a streak incentive compared to those who are facing this stable incentive of just getting paid the same amount every time.
And did those results surprise you?
I mean, yeah, I think, again, because they're paid less, I think that was the surprising aspect of this study that, even if they're paid a little bit less, they're still going to complete more work just because of the motivating power of these streaks.
So how could companies use this information? It's more like a psychological information than it is economic. How could they use it to motivate their employees?
Yeah, so I think anytime you have a bonus or maybe some sort of like point system that is in addition to a salary, because we're not saying that this should be a salary, right? It's more of like a bonus kind of situation. You can incorporate streak incentives. So if you wanted employees to complete different tasks consecutively, we really think streak incentives could be adopted in those situations to try and further motivate employees and increase productivity.
Is there a risk that streak incentives could backfire? Like, I have this feeling that if I skip a night flossing, it's all going to go to the gutter. My mouth is just going to be a mess and my dentist is going to hate me. So I have this feeling like I have to do it every day. Can people be demoralized if they break the streak and then it kind of works against you? Because then they're like, oh, F it, you know?
Yeah, so in our studies, we didn't see evidence of that. But there is other work by some of my co-authors suggesting that once people break a streak, it's hard to come back to it because it can be really demotivating to break that streak, as you mentioned. Streak incentives, we don't see that in the studies that we have, but I do think further studies could look at over a longer period of time, how do streak incentives perform, and some of these other sort of conditions where you can imagine that backfiring potentially coming up. I think our paper really is this first paper to show, hey, streak incentives, there's something here. And I think in future work, we can look at, what are the boundaries on this? Like, in what cases might it not work? And I think that's going to be a really interesting area of research for the future.
Where do you think this power comes from? Like, we see people chase streak incentives in video games. I've talked to rideshare drivers who are like, oh, I just got to get one more drive, one more ride. And then they end up coming home at 4 a.m. tired. But they have this sense that like they really followed a streak of picking up people. Where do you think this deep like psychological power of streaks comes from?
Yeah, so in the context of streak incentives, we really find that it has to do with this commitment to a goal of maximizing your earnings. So like whenever people are facing an incentive scheme, they often want to maximize the earnings that they can get. But we find that with streak incentives, people are especially committed to this goal. And so that seems to be what's driving it. But in streaks more generally, some of the other research suggests that things like wanting to stay on track and not wanting to break your streak because the streak in and of itself as a goal is also pretty motivating too.
Cool. Well, any other takeaways from this study that I could incorporate into my life to be more productive or anything like that?
I think this research just adds generally to this literature suggesting that streaks can be really useful and powerful. And while I think our paper really speaks to how companies and other sort of larger entities can incorporate this into consumer-facing products or, employee incentives, it is possible that an individual could incorporate a streak incentive as they're trying to get themselves to floss every day, as you mentioned, or something like that. I could imagine people setting that up for themselves if it was something of interest. So I would say just always think about the power of streaks and potentially incorporating that as you are trying to accomplish goals.
And don't be so hard on yourself if you fall off the wagon.
That too.
Katie, thanks for talking to me about your study. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Dr. Katie Mehr is an assistant professor in marketing at the University of Alberta. Like what you hear, but you're not going to be able to be with us the whole night, or maybe you're going to miss a part of the program. Fear not, the last show is available as a podcast. Just head over to www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com, lastshow.pizza. And there you can find out how to subscribe, how to stream the show on demand, and our social media accounts. Give us a follow if you want. I mean, I can't tell you what to do. I'm not your mother. Coming up after the break, babies love to be hugged, cuddled, squished, touched by mother and father. But it turns out those hugs rewires a baby's brain and has a lasting impact on how you act as an adult. So why does early touch matter so much? And what happens if it's skipped? For people who weren't cuddled that much as babies, are you doomed? These are all answers that we will receive with a neuroscientist on the other side of this.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Babies love hugs, but it turns out those hugs might rewire their brains for life, which is to say, how often your parents hugged you and handled you has an impact on you in later life. I'm here with someone who's researched that. His name is Julian Packheiser. He's a neuroscientist at Ruhr University in Germany. Julian, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So why does early touch matter so much? And what happens if we skip it?
I mean, as you can imagine, touch is something that we experience immediately after birth, right? Happens pretty much to everyone. You are born and then you are cradled in your parents' arms usually. So this is really our first experience, how we get to know the world after we are born. It is how we experience interpersonal relationships, how we experience warmth, just other social beings. So it's super important in early life to have this experience of touch. It's just ingrained into our biology, into our evolution, that touch is something fundamental to us. And if it's missing, that's definitely not ideal, so to say. So there is there have been studies that have shown if you deprive children early on in their life of this touch experience, this can lead to some rather detrimental outcomes. So there can be even life-threatening conditions if you completely deprive children of any tactile or social input, so to say. So it's really, really important for us to experience this.
I am taking detailed notes here because I'm visiting my parents this weekend, and I was not handled a lot as a kid. I wasn't touched a lot as a child, and I'm arming myself to make an argument here. But let's talk about your research.
In some cases, it spans a whole decade or more. How do you even begin to track the long-term effects of something like cuddling little kids into early adulthood?
I mean, this is actually a really interesting question because, to be frank, pretty much no study really did this on a longitudinal scale. I mean, there have been studies that looked into how this actually affected children that were deprived of touch in their early stages, and then also they had a bit of a longitudinal perspective, but most studies actually don't do this. They just look at one point in time and see how it affects our health, our behavior. And especially for newborns, for example, there's a lot of evidence that if you are, for example, born preterm, then touch is something that can really help you to gain weight, which is the most critical thing that should happen if you are a preterm baby, of course, because this predicts if you actually survive or not. So touch is a very, very powerful and sometimes surprisingly simple intervention at an early stage in life to actually improve survival. So we should really take this more into account, I think, especially, of course, if we take now the pandemic as a now almost, it seems far away, but it's still in our minds, where touch was really something completely lost to us to some extent. But we should not forget it. It's really a powerful tool. But just coming back to your question, unfortunately, not many studies really look at this long-term perspective. It's really more experimental studies, doing a massage and seeing how it affects your health, essentially.
How do you find your subjects, and what exactly are you testing for? Is it ethical to say to mothers, like, oh, I need you not to touch your kid while it grows up? I assume you didn't do that.
No. These studies are very old. So back then, ethical standards obviously were unfortunately quite different. Today, such studies could never be conducted. They are highly unethical. We would never instruct someone to not give touch to, for example, their child or another person if they wish to. That would never happen.
Good.
No, we study the positive effects of touch. We do not study touch deprivation per se. So we just want to see, okay, if, for example, you ask someone, if you don't have access to touch, does it maybe negatively affect your life? This can also be this is perfectly fine, right? If someone doesn't have touch available to them and then they really report, this is negatively affecting me, then you can draw some conclusions of the relationship between these variables.
Let's talk the positives. One study found that babies who got touch early were better at emotional conversations with their moms. Can you speak more about that? What does touch have to do with emotional wiring?
I mean, we connect through touch, right? As I said, it's our earliest experience of the world, especially in a social setting. So touch is really our means to communicate. And we communicate not just emotion, but also intention. We try to show other individuals, what do we want? What do we need? So if you have the sense of touch, it's really our primary earliest sense to communicate our affection, but also our intentions towards other individuals. And for a parental style, I mean, you cannot speak at birth. So how do you communicate what you need? Of course, you can make sounds, you can scream, but you also communicate a lot through tactile interactions. Whether you want, for example, you touch the mother's breast or something to really go, what do I need right now? I have a sense of hunger. So it has not just to do with affection. A lot is affection, but there's also intent that is communicated through it.
For people listening like me who weren't touched a lot as kids, who weren't cuddled a lot, are we doomed? Is it possible to catch up on the benefits of touch later in life? I myself, I don't like cuddling with my girlfriend, and sometimes it creates a division between us. Are we doomed?
I wouldn't say doomed. I mean, these are just individual differences, right? I mean, you need to obviously sometimes compromise if there are differences in a relationship, how much one person might have needs for touch and the other person doesn't. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily inherently negative if you are not someone who likes touch, right? You just need to address the needs as you feel that you require this particular need of touch. But it's not to say that someone who is not does not like being touched, that they have a more negative health outcome, for example, or more negative relationships. This is definitely not the case. These are just differences between people. And whenever we want to communicate that touch is something positive, we need to emphasize that this really depends if you want it. If you don't want touch, then touch is not something that will give anything to you. It will not give you positive health benefits. But for most of the people in the world, touch is something that is usually perceived as pleasant, something that is perceived as wanted. And then there's a clear indication, you should seek it if you feel this is something I want.
Based on your research, what advice would you tell mothers, families, even hospitals who treat newborns in terms of touch?
Yeah, I think our research definitely indicates we should engage more in touch, especially early in life, to promote the health of our children. And our research even indicates that it should be parental touch. So when, for example, you have a preterm baby, the studies show that touch by the parents is more beneficial, more effective in improving the survival of the child if it is done by the parents. Now, I obviously need to say this is not always possible, right? You have lots of conditions where the parents are unable following birth to potentially apply touch to their children. There might be prepartum depression, or there might be conditions associated with the birth that just make it difficult to give the touch. And in that case, you can also substitute the touch by, for example, healthcare providers. But if there's a possibility, it should be actually the parents.
Touch your kids, hug them, cuddle them.
Yes.
Well, Julian, I appreciate your time. I really did try to work in a touche pun into this interview, but I just didn't have an opportunity for it. But
Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's my fault. I appreciate you sharing your research with me. Have a great day.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Julian Packheiser is a social neuroscientist at Ruhr University in Germany. Up next, have you ever wondered who's going to take over the Earth when humans disappear? What species will rise to form the next civilization? Well, one zoologist thinks it's the octopuses. So I can't wait to joke around about that and also hear why it might be plausible. The octopus empire will rise again, or for the first time, or whatever. This is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see you on the other side of the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Wonder if we die out, if either we annihilate ourselves or fall victim to some extinction level event. If humans are gone, who will be the ones to make the next civilization? That is, what creature will be the ancestor of the world's next civilization? I always think it'll be fungi, funguses, fungi, who knows what, but we're not discussing fungus today. We're going to discuss our 8-tentacled friend, the octopus, with a zoology professor at the University of Oxford. His book, The Science of Why We Exist, is available wherever books are sold. He has spoken a little bit about octopuses taking over the world, potentially. His name is Tim Coulson. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So I like to speculate funny and weird ideas, but I'm just some idiot with no biology, zoology background. What inspires the idea from someone like you, who basically knows what they're talking about, that some species could dominate Earth after we disappear?
Well, when I was writing the book that you just mentioned, The Science of Why We Exist, I covered all sorts of things about how we came to be and how humans ended up building a civilization. And once the book came out, lots of people kept on asking me and said, well, all species eventually go extinct. Are humans going to go extinct? And I said, well, yeah, I think we will at some point. And they said, well, will another species then end up forming civilizations? And I said, well, it's possible. And they said, what might it be? And I said, well, I don't know. Octopus. And I've got, it's kind of an educated guess. I wouldn't, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't be putting money on it. Not that I'd ever be able to claim the bet because we'd be extinct. But octopuses are clever animals. They can solve problems. They're very dexterous. So they can, with their 8 tentacles, they can pick up and they can manipulate objects, so they can use simple tools. So I thought they've probably got as good a chance as anything else. And so I said this, and then my publicist for the book ran with it. It got picked up by all sorts of newspapers and magazines and what have you, and you. And it's a delight to be sitting here discussing it.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but octopuses, their intelligence, the way they evolved intelligence, they don't have a common ancestor with us humans that have a brain-like thing, which is to say their intelligence is completely different than ours. They came to it in a completely different way. And I know I just sounded smart, but I might be completely wrong on that. So is that statement true?
It's largely true. We do share a common ancestor with octopuses, but it was a very, very long time ago during the Cambrian. So we're talking about 500 million years ago, 500 million years ago.
And did that ancestor have a brain-like thing, though?
It would have had a brain, but it would have been a small brain. It would have been nothing like our brain or nothing like the brain of modern day octopuses. So you're right there. So we as humans and octopuses as octopuses have independently evolved the ability to solve problems and be smart. And, I don't want to, we are smarter than octopuses. Don't get me wrong. We can build, we've built civilizations, we've built complicated tools, we've sent spaceships into space. Octopuses haven't done that, and I kind of speculated that given enough time they might. And I mean, let's face it, 500 million years ago, our ancestor would have been a little worm-like thing, something along those lines. And if someone had said back then, well, that's going to evolve into a walking, talking, thinking species that visits the moon and sends spaceships to other planets, people would have probably said, you're pulling my leg, what a load of nonsense. So although I have no idea whether octopuses are really going to inherit the Earth and build civilizations, it's probably not a bad guess. It's as good a guess as fungi or something like that.
Well, they've got a serious competitor to the opposable thumb, their tentacles. And I feel like some evolutionary biologists say the two things you need are brains and thumbs if you're a mammal who wants to take over the world. So it's not a bad guess.
I think it's not a bad guess. And obviously octopuses are cephalopods, so they're not mammals, and they don't have thumbs, but they are very dexterous. And the other thing that I thought might help in their favor is, I think, to build a civilization, you need to be able to make tools. That's what the tentacles and their intelligence would allow them to do. But you probably need an easy source of energy. We built our civilization on coal. I think tidal power, could be something that octopuses that live in coastal regions might be able to harness they're very speculative now, but might be able to harness in millions of years' time in order to build their civilization.
That's so cool. An octopus power plant would be harvesting the tides as opposed to burning stuff.
Who knows? I mean, it's nice to imagine these things. I mean, one of the problems the octopus probably does have, though, which is different from us and mammals, is they only breed once and then they die. And biologists, we refer to that as a semelparous lifestyle. Well, organisms like us that can have multiple offspring in different breeding attempts are known as iteroparous. And being semelparous, it's kind of going to be difficult for octopus to pass on their knowledge and their learning from one generation to the next. However, you never know. It's not impossible that they might evolve to be iteroparous like we are as well. So they'd probably need to do that if they were really going to be able to build civilization.
We spoke about their brains or their brain-like things a little bit ago. What makes octopus intelligence different than ours or unique compared to mammalian intelligence?
So it's interesting. Their brains are more distributed than ours. Ours kind of sits in the skull. It's all in one place. Their brain is much more distributed. They sort of have 9 kind of mini brains, as it were, that link up. And each tentacle can operate sort of independently from the other. And then they've got the central control system that they all link to. So their brains are much more distributed. But really interestingly, when scientists study our brains, they do it by looking at brain waves. They'll put you in a machine that can detect the electrical brain waves going on in your brains. And when we're thinking, our brain waves have a particular characteristic. When people have done this with octopus solving problems in tanks, they've found that some of the brain waves that octopuses have are remarkably similar in terms of their patterns to the brainwaves we have when we're solving problems, which I think is truly fascinating because, as I said, we've evolved independently, but there are clearly differences, but there are some probable similarities to the way that their brain works. They're all made of neurons. Those neurons form networks. They have the ability to learn. They're sensing their environment. They're taking the information from their environment to work out what they're going to do to decide how to behave. But the way they will envision and they will experience the world is certainly very different from us. It would be very different to be an octopus than it would be for us. For example, some species can change color to match their background. So they've got light sensing and texture sensing cells in their tentacles that are able to detect the environment around them and then are able to match the color and the texture. I mean, it's quite remarkable.
My background's in computer science. I'm the lowest form of scientist, but the way you describe their brains kind of sounds like a neural network, sort of how like AI or a large language model might work. The way their brains work sound like more like a computer than ours.
Well, of course, a lot of the architecture of AI and large language models is broadly based on our understanding of how our brains work. So absolutely. I mean, you build up these networks. Artificial neural networks are sort of based along the way on ideas about how the brain works. Obviously, they're not perfect mimics. Artificial intelligence will probe pretty good at the moment. And, some of the large language models are remarkable. They're not intelligent in the way that we are or the way that we think. And they're significantly smaller than say, they have significantly smaller numbers of links, even though they're now in the billions compared to the human brain, which is in the trillions of synapses.
We're here with zoology professor Tim Coulson from the University of Oxford. He's the author of The Science of Why We Exist. That's available wherever books are sold. We're talking the octopuses taking over the earth when humans disappear. And when we come back, we'll get philosophical. We'll get speculative. We'll talk what octopus culture could look like compared to our culture now. That in just a moment.
Part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Keep listening to The Last Show with David Cooper, because the alien invasion can wait. The Last Show with David Cooper.
We're discussing the eventual octopus takeover of the Earth, and by eventual, I mean speculative. We're just wondering what an octopus society would look like after humans disappeared. I'm speaking with Professor of Zoology Tim Coulson from the University of Oxford. Check out his book, The Science of Why We Exist. That's available wherever books are sold. And let's get philosophical, maybe a little speculative, maybe a little silly here.
Even more.
You mentioned the power generators, perhaps using tidal forces to get electricity, or however octopus culture might evolve to use power. What would octopus culture look like to you? Like, imagine you're a science fiction author trying to write hard sci-fi, informing it based on what you know as a specialist. What would octopus culture actually look like compared to ours?
That's a really interesting question. In fact, there are some books. There's a sci-fi author called Adrian Tchaikovsky, who's written a series of books about octopuses taking over the world. I hadn't read any of this until, or building civilizations rather. I hadn't read this until after I'd done my interview. But it's it's a great idea. And being underwater, they're one of the differences that their culture would experience and ours is they can move in 3 dimensions. Sort of, they can shoot up, they can swim down, they can swim along the bottom sideways. Whilst we're stuck to the earth by gravity, we can't sort of take off and swim in a completely different direction. And I suspect that means that their towns and cities would look very different from us. They'd be able to perhaps build them in terms of spheres rather than the sort of 2 dimensions that we build our cities on. So I suspect that would be the one thing that would be different. Given they sense the world in different ways, their art would be extraordinarily different from us, I would imagine. I don't know what it's really like to be an octopus, to experience things, but assuming a culture developed, I would imagine they'd produce art. Music probably wouldn't be quite such a thing. It's harder to hear underwater than it is. Sound travels in different ways underwater than in air.
But vibrations in water could be a part of, like, a symphony to an octopus culture could be vibrations in the water, which is sound or music like.
It could be, maybe techno would be their thing, deep bass, traveling far. You're right that you can hear sounds underwater, but certainly to us, it needs to be a little bit, it sounds a little bit muffled. I have no idea, I have to say, about how good octopuses are at sensing sounds, but presumably they can.
Does you, as someone who's got a doctorate who teaches zoology, feel a little bit silly talking about octopuses enjoying techno in the ocean?
Yeah, but I know, of course, it's not my day job to research octopuses. I'm interested in what happens when we add or remove predators from ecosystems on a range of timescales. And as I said, this is a bit of fun, but it did come from a serious place. It came from having spent, probably the best part of 3 decades researching and trying to understand how we came to exist and form our civilizations.
Well, let's talk what humans could do to octopus's environments. Like, is there a chance that we could screw up the world so bad that we wouldn't even make way for the octopuses to evolve into super intelligent beings?
It's entirely possible. There are multiple species of octopus, and they live in all sorts of marine environments. So hopefully 1 or 2 octopuses will survive. And what evolution is very good at is adapting species to the environments that they experience. So if the environment changes, there's the opportunity for species to adapt. One of the challenges that we have at the moment is we're changing many environments, including those in the oceans, really quite quickly and much faster than they would have traditionally or typically changed on evolutionary timescales. So it's possible that we're changing environments so fast that the octopus won't be able to cope. We're also eating them. They do taste quite nice.
They do. As we do this interview, I'm rethinking, should I be eating octopus? I feel bad for even admitting it. I've avoided media about octopus, like My Octopus Teacher and stuff, because it's such a tasty meal. Yeah, I feel bad about that.
Another question I got after I'd written this book was, how are humans going to evolve into the future? And Are we going to become super intelligent, or are we going to become a little bit dafter? And are we going to become the superheroes of the Marvel franchise, or is it going to end up being a bit like that Adam Sandler film Idiocracy? And I hate to say, I think it's probably more like the Idiocracy route. And the reason is we developed our intelligence and our abilities over the last kind of 10 million years. Our ancestors did this with an increase in brain size, and then really picking up sort of in the last, 2 to 3 million years, we became as clever as we are. And the reason we became clever is there was an advantage to being clever in terms of surviving and reproducing. And one of the real triumphs of modern civilization is that we can survive and we can reproduce with very little effort.
So you're saying we can all be dumb and just live comfortably?
Yeah, well, we kind of are anyway, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, so my guess, it'll take a long time. We don't need to worry that it's going to happen in the next generation or two. And there's actually some evidence that over the last few thousand years, that our brain size has shrunk. Now, that might be because it's become more efficient rather than we've got less intelligence.
No, for me, I'm definitely dumb. That's a non-starter.
But I think there's also. We've moved away from octopuses, but
no, I love it. I mean, stream of consciousness journey is one of the great pleasures of doing this show. Please continue.
So yeah, my guess is if civilization continues as it is, amazing advances what we've achieved, but we've kind of changed the way that humans will evolve. We've changed the force of selection on humans, and it's so easy to survive and so easy to reproduce now that we could well lose some of our intellectual abilities over the next few million years if we don't destroy ourselves first, of course.
Well, I always find this notion of a Fermi paradox or the Fermi paradox very interesting. You mentioned will we evolve to superintelligence? Well, I guess an extension of that is if we do, will we colonize other worlds, other planets, other solar systems, other galaxies, whatever? And then it begs the question, can we become superintelligent? And if we do, can we colonize the galaxy?
Yeah.
If that's possible, why haven't other civilizations done it? And why haven't we heard from them? If superintelligence in terms of colonizing the galaxy is possible, where is everyone? Why is it radio silence, literally and figuratively out there? So it's kind of a worry. It begs the question, is superintelligence even possible? Do these questions even make sense? I don't know, but that's something that I've always found very interesting.
Well, so one of the really interesting things about that, and it's something I do write about in the book, is exactly the Fermi paradox. Why haven't we heard from anyone? The universe is so vast. It takes so long to travel to the nearest solar system, let alone further solar systems away. We would need to come up with the science fiction ways of putting ourselves in suspended animation and then waking up somewhere. I don't know how many people would want to do that. I mean, there might be some people we'd like to send away to do that, but whether they'd want to go is another matter, I guess. And so the reason we haven't seen anyone is the sheer vastness of the universe and the sheer smaller length, a small amount of time that we've been looking. But if my guess is there are other, or there have been, and there will be other intelligent species on other planets that will evolve. I don't think that the conditions on Earth for life to get started was so unusual that they won't happen anywhere else. And if you can give life long enough time, I don't see why smart animals wouldn't evolve elsewhere. But again, speculation.
Or maybe out there on a distant star, there's some intelligent octopus-like life. They've taken one look at us, they've deemed us annoying, and they're like, why would I even want to talk to those people? Last question. If octopus art existed, what would a television show be like?
Oh, gosh. I imagine the villains are going to be,
us.
No, things that eat them, right? So they're going to be big fish. They're going to be sharks and what have you. And and what would an octopus kind of evil genius look like? Well, probably just a squid or something. I don't know.
They'd probably love our version of Jaws as horror. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me, Tim. This was a lot of fun.
It was great. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Professor Tim Coulson works in the zoology department at the University of Oxford. His book, The Science of Why We Exist, is available wherever books are sold. Okay, the Weird Train continues in a moment when we come back with a pizza shop owner who
who recently went viral for charging not 99 pounds, not 101 pounds, but 100 pounds for anyone who orders a pie from his shop that has pineapple. You know, Hawaiian pizza? Things are about to get controversial in a minute. I am David Cooper, and this is The Last Show.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Pineapple on pizza, a culinary choice that sparks more arguments at the dinner table than politics, but one restaurant in Norwich, England has found a way to settle this debate once and for all by charging $120 for the privilege of ruining your slice of pie. I'm here with the owner of Luca Pizza. His name is Francis Woolf. Francis, thank you for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure, David. Thanks for having me on.
$120 American, that's about 100 pounds. I imagine this starts as a joke. I'm picturing you and your restaurateur buddy saying, pineapple in pizza is an abomination, but if you want it at our restaurant, you're going to pay the price. Is that how it happens? Is that how an expensive item on your menu like that comes to be?
I mean, you couldn't be more right. I mean, we were sitting around looking at our menu and wanting to just have a bit of fun. You know, we all like, you know, all of us in the restaurant trade, we like to stay up late, have a few beers together. And we're sitting around looking at the menu and we thought, you know, we'd had a few requests in for a Hawaiian, as people call it. And we were, you know, riffing on kind of how horrible it is as a combination. And we thought, okay, you know, if people want it, then fair enough, we'll stick it on the menu, but people have got to pay through the nose for it. So we put it on for £100 and there it is. And what would you know it, a few weeks later, we've made international headlines.
I imagine no one's bought the pie, or very few people have bought the pie, but you could not do any better than paying thousands of dollars, even tens of thousands of dollars for a publicist to get publicity anywhere near this. You've sparked a debate, and I think you've solved the debate. And it's that you can have it, but it's annoying and you got to pay the price.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we are completely humbled by all of the exposure we've got from this. I mean, we had no idea we were going to go viral. I mean, I guess when people go viral, they don't plan it, but we certainly didn't. And it's been bonkers. You know, like I say, it started off as a joke, and suddenly we're like in the news over there where you are. We were on Radio New Zealand, on TV in Australia. We've got a film crew down at the restaurant as I speak, like taking shots for into news sites. It's been bonkers, yeah.
Well, the article I read on the story was from a couple days ago, and so I imagine then no one had bought the 100-pound pizza. Has anyone bought it now?
No one's got deep enough pockets around in Norwich, I'm afraid, to fork out £100 for a pizza. I wish they did because like, let's be honest, the markup on that's pretty good. But if somebody does decide that they're going to order it, like we're not heartless assholes. We will make sure that they get good value. So we've already decided if somebody does buy it, we're going to send them a couple of T-shirts and like a few bottles of wine and things like that. You know, we're going to make it worth it. So.
And are we using canned pineapple? Are you keeping a fresh pineapple on hand? I imagine you have to have one ready to go.
Oh, hell no. Oh, no. We're using the world's cheapest canned pineapple. Like, if these people want their disgusting pizza, then we ain't going to. I mean, obviously, the pizzas at Luca are fantastic. And I know I've got to say that, but I genuinely believe it as well. Like, you know, we're a small independent pizzeria. We sit out on the outskirts of Norwich. We're a tiny little 30-seater restaurant. You know, we've not been going that long. I've had a restaurant on that site for well over 10 years, but this pizzeria has only been going less than a year, and it is. And I genuinely believe that it's a fantastic pizza. However, if people want to ruin it with pineapple, they can ruin it with the tinned pineapple that we're getting from the supermarket, you know.
Are you aware that you're just adding fuel to this fire that the debate of pineapple pizza rages on? The Icelandic president, I don't know if you're aware of this, almost triggered an international crisis over his dislike of pineapple pizza. There are people who love it. There are people that hate it. What is your stance? Is it that it's a crime against pizza or that it should be tolerated?
Oh, 100%. I mean, obviously, each to their own. Everyone's got a different opinion. It just so happens that some people's opinions are dreadful. I mean, like, there are some great polarizing topics in our world at the moment. There's, over here we've had Brexit. Over there, you've just voted in a pineapple for president. You know what I mean? But as these great polarizing topics go, this is a safe one to have a strong opinion about, and I think that's why people love it. In the grand scheme of things, let's be honest, between you and me, like, it doesn't matter, does it? I mean, it's just an ingredient on a pizza, like, in the grand scheme of things. But what a fun thing to be able to have an opinion about. It's safe. Like, we can have these vehement, strong opinions. We can slate the other side and say that they're awful, but really, it's just a pizza. No one's going to go home and cry about it.
You mentioned countless articles about this debacle. You guys have done interviews. There's a film crew at your restaurant right now. What is this publicity like for a 30-seat pizza restaurant in Norwich? It's got to be kind of amazing.
I mean, it's completely mad. We're like, so I mean, I don't know if your listeners know where Norwich is, but like, essentially, if you look at a map of England, we're like the sort of the hole of England, with a big sort of bum on the side.
The tuchus, as my mother would say in Yiddish.
Oh yeah, fair enough. So we're right there. We're about as far east as it gets. I mean, Norwich is a place that nobody really goes through. People come here to retire and die. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a wonderful place, and I love it with all of my heart. But like, we're kind of the middle of nowhere, and the fact that we've made these international headlines, it's not only great for us, it's great for our city, and it's great for it's great for kitsch news in general. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we love it.
It's a fun one. Has the restaurant been more crowded since the news story broke? And do you expect it will be if it hasn't? What do you do with this added publicity? What's going on in the restaurant since this dropped?
Well, I mean, we thought we'd be really busy. We thought this would be a huge turning point for us. We're already planning where to invest all the new money. Do you know what I mean? But as it goes, it turns out you make international news, but unfortunately, most of those millions and millions of people that we've reached with this story don't live in Norwich, so they can't order the pizza.
There's got to be more than 30 people in Norwich to sit in those 30 seats, and I'm not convinced there is.
For sure, but I mean, we have our loyal customers, and we sit on the outskirts of Norwich, and we're quite happy ticking over. Like, we don't need queues around the block. Like, we're really happy with what we do, and obviously this exposure has been really fun for us, and it's been really cool, and like, our customers are loving it. They're all coming up and chatting about it, and we sort of toyed with the idea of launching various specials. I mean, we've got a pina colada on at the moment to celebrate it, which is one of my favorite drinks. So, it's not that we hate pineapple. We love pineapple, but pineapple on pizza is what we're not so into.
Just keep it off the pizza unless you want to pay. You mentioned, I read you was quoted that New York style pizza is your favorite. In the US, there's quite a debate around New York style, Chicago style, Detroit style.
Yeah, I mean, so personally, I pretty much love all types of pizza. I love a deep dish. I love a New Haven style. I like classic Neapolitan pizza. And obviously, the way I feel about every pizzeria is that they should have something unique about their dough. And I feel like we've got something unique about our dough. I mean, I've done a couple of culinary tours of New York and a few other places to kind of make sure that what we're doing is interesting and unique to this area of the world. And I think we've achieved that with what we produce. I mean, I think our pizzas are certainly unique to Norwich, and I would encourage all of your listeners to take a flight over to London, then get a train, then get a bus, then walk.
Donkey cart, and then a sled, a bobsled.
Yeah, exactly. And make it all the way out in deepest, darkest Norfolk and come and check us out.
All right. Well, Francis, thanks for talking to me. Good luck with all the publicity. I think it's well-deserved. It seems like you got a great pizza shop. It's a funny thing to do, and I wish you all the best.
Oh, what a pleasure. So good to talk to you, David. Thank you, mate.
Francis Woolf can be found at Luca Pizza, where he's the owner. That's in Norwich, England. After the break, things will get risque with mate poaching, relationship hijacking, romantic interference. You know those unscrupulous people out there who try to steal somebody's partner to have an affair with them? Now, whether we want to admit it or not, it's all too common. But how and why do people steal partners? We'll talk to a psychologist who researched this minefield of a topic to give you answers. So don't go stealing somebody's girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse until you've listened to what he has to say after the break.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate confessions and useless obsessions. You're listening to The Last Show with David Cooper.
Mate poaching, relationship hijacking, romantic interference. That all sounds dramatic, but are there way too many examples of affairs out there, whether we want to admit it or not, that make it all too common? Cheating? Some people try to steal partners with charm and kindness, while others use more aggro tactics. Psychologist Kyle Conlon from the Stephen F. Austin State University is here to discuss. He studied this and found that personality plays a big role on mate poaching. Kyle, thanks for joining me.
Hey, David. Thank you for having me.
So what made you want to study how people try to steal someone else's partner? It's kind of a dramatic field of study, no?
Yeah, well, I should probably start by clarifying that my interest in mate poaching is strictly professional, not personal.
Good.
It's not a hobby of mine. I'm not going around on nights and weekends trying to infiltrate and destroy people's relationships for fun.
You're not doing gonzo-style journalism here.
That's right. Yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I've been happily married for 10 years, and my wife, who is also a psychologist, it's true, we're just great fun at dinner parties, as you can imagine. She supports my professional study of this topic, so I'll get that disclaimer out of the way. But of all the ways to attract a mate, I think mate poaching is especially fascinating for a couple of reasons. First, attempting to steal away another person's mate requires a certain level of self-confidence, self-assuredness, swagger, if you will, to presume that you are a better catch than someone's current partner is. So the mate poaching mindset itself is quite interesting. And second, mate poaching has some advantages, but also disadvantages. There are many potential benefits, which include gaining sexual access to a desired mate, forming an emotional connection with them, conjoining resources with them. So there are some pros to poaching. But alas, there are also potential downsides. The desired mate may not be fully receptive or may change their mind. And if the poacher is caught, they may suffer reputational damage. It can harm their relationships with friends and family members. And it can also lead to the mated partner, showing up on the poacher's doorstep with 10 friends with baseball bats. So I find it to be a complex and fascinating endeavor that, if done well, has benefits, but if done poorly or non-strategically, has substantial downsides.
It's really interesting you say there's benefits, which we'll get to in a moment, but you're right that it takes gall, or as my mother would say, chutzpah, to poach someone's partner. Talk to me about dominance-oriented and prestige-oriented individuals as it comes to mate poaching.
Yeah, so dominance is a trait that is characterized by the use of force, coercion, intimidation, manipulation to achieve one's goals. So dominant people use very direct, even confrontational means to get what they want. And on the other hand, prestigious individuals use their skills, their abilities, their talents to benefit others, who in turn bestow upon them elevated social status. So for this study, I was measuring how dominance and prestige-oriented participants were, and then I gave them some measures of mate poaching. And I should mention, for this study, I was looking at a group of college students. And in some ways, college students are a great population for studying mate poaching, because college students are surrounded by lots of other people, many of whom are in romantic relationships and therefore potentially poachable. And when you combine that with the hormonal aspirations of young adults, you really do have an ideal setting for studying dynamics of mate poaching as it relates to those other personality traits.
I'm not a cool guy. My first year of university dorm life was totally unexciting, but I remember being in a dorm where the boys slept next to the girls. It was a chaotic environment for relationship stability. I'll say that at least.
For sure, yeah.
Let's dig more into the possible benefits of poaching a mate. How can this benefit society? How can this benefit the individual?
Well, it can certainly benefit the individual. Like I mentioned, if they are successful at this, they can gain access to a new mate and all the advantages thereof. And maybe they're in a relationship with someone that they're not happy with, and maybe they're just looking to switch mates and kind of level up, if you will, to try to get to a partner maybe who has what we call better mate value. So someone who is kinder, gentler, more prestigious, whatever the particular traits are that they're looking at. As far as the benefits to society, there at large, there may not be as many benefits there, but definitely for someone who is looking to attract a new partner, it can certainly pay off. But yeah, as I mentioned before, you can't go recklessly doing this. You have to kind of proceed carefully. And for this study in particular, it was kind of asking really how people go about approaching it, because we have some ideas of potential strategies, but it's interesting how those strategies align with one's own dispositional dominance and prestige.
As I asked, what are the benefits to society? I was like, there couldn't possibly be any. So
there may be, yeah.
Let's talk about the study. You focused on young, heterosexual, college-age participants. What kind of questions were you asking them? I feel like the questions in and of themselves, some of them at least, had to be racy, edgy, provoking.
Yeah, a little bit. So like I had said before, I gave them 2 measures of mate poaching. And the first one asked them whether they had ever attempted poaching someone in the past, and if so, how successful they were. And it also asked whether someone had ever tried to poach them away from a relationship partner, and if so, how successful was the person's attempt at doing so. And the second measure got really into the nitty-gritty and asked about the specific ways, the specific tactics they used in the past to lure away a desired mate from a relationship. And this is where the research got interesting, because I was able to examine the specific tactics that dominance and prestige-oriented people used to try to attract away a mate. So various things like, everything from being generous to demonstrating resources to asking people whether they tried to get the person drunk and make themselves sexually available. So it was a whole gamut of different tactics.
Were any of the tactics a little bit ethically dubious, like maybe getting somebody drunk or something a little bit dark like that?
I would say so, yes. Probably not the most positive, socially desirable behavior there. And other things were, you talk about ethically dubious, examples like derogating a current partner or inviting meddling into the relationship, saying things like, well, I'm looking for a better partner than my current partner. I mean, that's just a little manipulative, right? So on one end, you had positive strategies and the ones that were more socially desirable, but on the other end, certainly some behaviors that were a little direct, if not inappropriate.
We're talking a lot about the poachers, but let's focus on the poached. Does your research say anything about the people who get poached themselves, the people who leave their couple or entertain affairs or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not in my study, but there has been some research out there. And when it comes to kind of which tactics are most effective or how do they interact with people who are willing to be poached, we know that at a personality level, traits like what are called the dark triad, so people who score high on Machiavellianism and psychopathy, narcissism, at a broader personality level, people who are open to new experiences and extroverted. Those are some traits that people tend to possess when they are considering being poached. And for a lot of this research, we can't necessarily study this in real time, right? I know it would make for a great reality show, but you can't follow someone along as they are actively poaching or being poached. Even though I should maybe sell that idea to a studio, coming this fall, Poached, a new series.
You said it on this show, so I might own the copyright. I don't know. I got to check with my lawyer.
You might. Yeah, you should check. But those are some of the traits. So a lot of this research looks at kind of perceptions of which tactics would be most effective. So, for example, for female poachers, what is deemed effective is kind of improving one's looks or derogating a rival's appearance. For males, things like resource display are judged to be more effective. So if people are open to those forms of mate poaching, they may be more likely to be poached. But really, there's no simple answer to that question. Poaching depends on a lot of different factors, right? It's a delicate dance of at least 3 individuals. I mean, you have the poacher, you have the poached individual, but you also have the poachee, the person who is trying not to be cucked, right? So there's a lot going on here. So your question is a good one, but it's a hard one to nail down in terms of why someone would be open and amenable to poaching, because it depends on some other factors too.
Kyle, thanks for talking to me today. I've enjoyed the chat.
David, thanks so much. This is fun.
Kyle Conlon is an associate professor of psychology at Stephen F. Austin State University. That's the show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.